Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? Welcome, and before we begin, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting, where they believe that your character is the compass guiding you through life's journey. Whether you're facing personal or professional challenges, they are dedicated to helping you discover and strengthen the core values that define who you are. Well, we are here with Jude Sclater, and we're so glad to have you. Dave, you want to give us a little bit more about what we would expect to talk about today?
And thank you very much, Matt, and welcome, Jude. Jude, as you know, we have talked. Matt and I selfishly created this podcast so we could talk to cool coaches and learn about their secret sauce and what they do and really share this with our listeners. So we're excited to have you on. We've got lots of mutual connections now, and I feel like it does feel like the community is building, which I appreciate. I wanted to first welcome you, ask you a check-in question, which is on a scale from 1 to 10, how present are you in this moment? 1 being low, 10 being high.
Ooh. You always want to go to 7, but one of my friends, he's got this whole thing where you can't pick 7 because everybody picks 7. So, and it's funny, I kind of want to say 8, but then we had a conversation about everybody picking 8.
Yes.
Don't pick 8. But I'd say I probably am at about an 8. And the reason being that the people next door have been drilling all day. I did pop over and check with them that they were going to stop during this hour, but there's just this little piece of me that's like, are they going to start again? Are they still going to start again? And I know that you all won't be able to hear it because the equipment's really good. But I hear it, and then it starts sort of putting me off what it is that I'm saying. But definitely an 8, and I think as we go on, it's just going to grow because I'll tune all of that out.
I appreciate you sharing that. And 8 is my favorite number. Just to be clear, it was the number I wore on my soccer or football jersey when I was growing up. So let's go over to Matt. Matt, where are you on a scale from 1 to 10?
I got a 10. I really like. This is no extra. Well, of course, there's extra comments, but I'm at a 10. I'm at my second cup of coffee. I'm ready. I'm looking forward to this, and I have been following Jude just for full disclosure all for the last several weeks on what she's been posting on LinkedIn. I hope the listeners really appreciate what she has to say. I think they will. That's her shameless plug. You can follow her on LinkedIn. Because I think what you'll find is a very forthcoming person around everything she does. So very exciting.
I'm looking forward to asking it more questions and bringing that into the conversation. And also, I am also at an 8 with Jude, and 8 plus 8 makes 16. So 16 beats 10, Matt.
Okay, that's fine. You can. Not competitive at all.
Yeah, it's not a competition, right?
Right, you're right.
But a little helps. Yeah. Jude, I have a question, and I'm going to ask it a little differently just to start. Is when you were on the tube or any transportation in your part of the world, and 10 years ago when somebody turned to you and they said, "Oh, hi Jude, what do you do?" And now 10 years later, they ask you the same question. What's changed for you, and how do you introduce yourself?
So 10 years ago, I was still working at Deloitte. So I would have just said I'm a learning and development manager and then had to try and explain that to them. 10 years on, and if I say I'm an executive coach, I still need to explain to them what exactly that means. I think one of the things that has changed is I am getting clearer at explaining what it is that I do. And I tend to talk about that I go into organizations and that I coach managers how to lead their teams. And people sort of understand that, and then that starts a conversation. One of the things, I've been listening to the show for a little while, and one of the things that I'm actually finding quite reassuring by listening to a lot of your guests is that all of us coaches seem to find it hard to explain what it is that we do in a way that people understand it. And I love coaching. I love what it can do. I also hate that we use that word coach, because in some ways I think it's quite meaningless, at least for some of the things that we do. Really, you ask anyone if they think of a coach, what do they think of? They're thinking of that person on the sports team, on the field, in the room with you, and they're often telling you what to do. Whereas what we do is very much about helping people work out their own solutions. But if you start using that language with someone, they look at you like maybe you're a bit crazy.
Spot on. Yeah. 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 Oh boy. Jude, just on that whole difference between like a sport coach and an actual leadership development type coach or transformational coach, it is really different. And this is why I think it's like one of the most important things in organizations to define what coaching is, and then to keep going back like as if that's your North Star. And I learned that through working in a group, like an EMCC working group. This one person came up and they said, "We just want you to know that the definition of coaching is what will be questioned and wondered about. So you need to get this right." And that was probably like a big game changer for me, because I had to answer the question personally. Anyway, okay, I get excited. Okay, Jude, tell us, what is your secret sauce if you had to define one?
So I would say for me, it's the ability to take something that looks complicated and explain it in a way that makes it easy to understand. And I've been told that I do that in a way that's not patronizing or condescending. And that's something I think that's been with me throughout my entire career.
When do you know that was
Yeah.
your secret sauce?
So I think I first worked it out. So early in my career, I was an auditor at Deloitte in New Zealand. I used to do internal audit and IT audit, and what that requires is you go in and you're looking at. So if I think about IT audit, for example, I'm looking at an organisation's financial systems, because I need to tell the financial auditors whether they can rely on the numbers that come out of those systems. And sometimes those can be quite complex. There can be lots of moving parts and things that are going on. And I seem to have a natural ability to get to grips with and understand that system end to end quite quickly, zone in on where I thought some of the risks and things were going to be, and then in the way that I would then explain those risks and what it was an organisation needed to do about that was quite clear. And it's something that my managers sort of picked up on a lot. And then I think I kind of forgot that was my secret sauce. But I wrote a book called Think Like a Coach. And when I was first talking about it with my publisher and with my editor, and they were asking me lots of questions, and we are having this sort of great conversation about it, and they were going to take it on. And towards the end of the conversation, I just sort of stopped them and said, "How do you even know this is any good? Because you haven't read it. You haven't read any pages yet. This is just kind of an initial discussion." And my editor, so remember, she said, "I can tell by the way you describe it." And she's like, "You've taken this complex thing, coaching that could be considered quite complex, and you're talking about it in a way that's really easy to understand." And I think that kind of reignited for me, oh yeah, I am really good at doing this. This is something that, I think that's the thing with your strengths or your secret sauce. It's something that is effortless to you, so it feels like it's not a big deal. But in that moment, it kind of reminded me, yeah, this is actually something that I'm really good at, and I can draw on even more.
Yeah, I really like how you describe that, and there's an interesting theme around how do you say less and mean more. Right? And I'm very interested in like what that means to you. You know, how do you say less and mean more?
Oh, absolutely. So many things are pinging off in my mind. I suppose the first one, if I think about the way that I deliver training, and I very much borrow from, there's another great coach out there, Michael Bungay Stanier, also written an amazing book called The Coaching Habit. And I've seen a few of his training, and what he tries to do is give you the smallest amount of information you need to be able to go and put the skills into action. And I've really adopted that because I've also been guilty of putting on the multi-day trainings with loads of models and things that are going on, and everyone feels amazing when they leave, but it's debatable how much of that actually then um, ends up being put into practice when those people go back out into the real world. And so the way that I try to design training is, what is the least amount that you need to know to be able to get practicing with these skills so that you feel confident enough to be able to take those out and use them in the real world. And how can I make that shift as small as possible as well, because it's those little things that make it a lot easier to put them into practice. And that's something that I bring into my coaching a lot. You don't have to make a massive change or a massive step for there to be a difference in your life. Often it's just the tiny little thing that you're doing, but you're doing it consistently. And that's something that I talk a lot about, and I try to encourage the people that I coach with as well.
Jude, did you know you were going to write a book even 2 years ago?
2 years I was writing the book. so
Okay.
but when I was a little girl, my aunt gave me her old typewriter, like a proper old with the keys typewriter, and I used to pretend to write stories and things on it. So I think there's a part of me that always knew one day I would write a book. In terms of writing this kind of book or a business book, a really good friend of mine, just after I had left Deloitte, she's someone that we used to bring in a lot at Deloitte to do personal impact coaching and things like that. And she took me under her wing. And one of the first things she said to me was, "You've got to write a book. It's going to be great for your business." And I was just like, "Whoa, I've just left
Mm.
the corporate life. I have no idea what I would even write about." So I started out with a blog. And the funny thing is that the ninth edition that I wrote was based on a workshop that I had delivered for a client during COVID. They asked me to do a lunch and learn for their consultants on coaching. And this is kind of an example of my secret sauce, because I sat there going, "Oh, I've only got an hour. You know, how can I take, if I do something like the grow model, which is an amazing model, right? It's beautiful, but in an hour you're just scratching the surface of it. And I really wanted them to have some kind of skills that they could take away. And I remember kind of talking to a friend and going, "It can't be that hard. Like, coaching's just listening and asking questions." And so then I came up with this kind of little model of, right, if you just ask people to tell you more and you summarize back what you're hearing and you make sure that you're listening to them, that's kind of coaching. So I delivered that for them, and it went really well. And I ended up writing a blog post about it, because don't keep creating new content all the time. You can just document what you've done. And that actually ended up being the first little inkling of then what became the book.
Mm.
And that was, when did I write that? So that would have been, I'm just trying to think of when. Yeah, 2020, right? That's when we all went into COVID.
Yeah.
I used to years ago, one of my first jobs as I was finishing graduate school was to run manager training for KPMG. So I heard the auditor in Jude come out as you were describing a little bit of the process that you use, and I really appreciate that, and the very thoughtful process that you use to be able to bring people from where they are to where they choose to be. What would I experience from your coaching in terms of your process and your approach?
So I describe myself as being quite emergent, which is interesting because I'm very much a rule follower, and I like there being good structures and things in place. And I think in the training I did to be a coach was very structured. There was a very definite process that you would follow. But over years of coaching and being in supervision, I think coaching is really something I probably should have always have been doing. I love it so much, that over time I've kind of relaxed into my own skin, and I feel really comfortable that I can work with whatever somebody brings into the room. And part of the reason for that is that I'm not responsible for their outcomes. What I'm responsible for is just creating this really great space for them to be able to think within. And part of that is about sometimes challenging them, often getting them to slow down and celebrate some of the good stuff that they've been doing, because they're getting over it way too quickly. And actually, I've forgotten the question.
Yeah, it's you know what, you were so in the question, immersed in it, which is, yeah, it's like, how would somebody experience your coaching approach? And you know what, we just experienced
we just did that.
Yeah.
You had me mesmerized, so I was like, oh yeah, I could do that.
So yeah, that is what it's like. What I've now learnt is, and I've been working on recently in supervision, is I sort of use the analogy of a house, in that when my clients come to me and I meet them at the door, and I'll welcome them, and I might give them a little bit of information about the layout of the house, and then really it's over to them, and I ask them, what is it that you need from I don't say house, but metaphorically, what do you need while you're in the house today? And I help them get clear on that, and then I really leave it to them to wander the rooms of the house as they need to, and I'm there. I've created this safe, great thinking space for them, and then at the end, it's about me bringing them to the door and making sure that they have what they need before they go on their way.
Jude, you kind of mentioned the idea around getting supervision. What have you kind of discovered over these 6 years of being sort of in business for yourself, like that you would want from a coach? What is it that you're like, hey, look, during this time, this is what I really need or want from a coach? I know that need and want are different. But.
Yeah. So when I come into coaching as supervision, I bring a lot. I think part of my secret sauce of being able to make the complex easy to understand is that I'm absorbing a lot of things to enable me to be able to do that. And so often, what coaching is for me is that while I seem to be good at making things easy for other people, I tend to make them more complicated for myself. And so often what I need from a coach is someone who has the capacity to hear all of that, and then almost, I don't know if it's not quite, I'm thinking of a coach that I was working with recently, and one of the things I really loved about what she did was she would just keep summarizing back what I had said, and she would do that quite a lot until we got to a point where it's not that she was creating the turning point, but there was a point there where she would almost just point out a few things that had kept coming up all the time, just to kind of bring those into my awareness. And that's something that I found incredibly helpful. Initially, I was actually a little annoyed, and then as she kept doing it, I realized what was going on was that every time she did it, I had to make sense again of what it was I had just said, and in doing that, my thinking then jumped ahead a little bit more. So, a coach who is comfortable enough that they know that I will get there, and actually their role is just to hear it and to reflect it. I think that's kind of the thing I need.
I like that. As far as resources, you kind of mentioned Michael Bungay Seniors, and I hope you would say you would recommend Think Like a Coach by Jude Sclater, available wherever your books are sold. And then any other resources you would recommend?
So there's two others that I really love. The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters. That one for me really helped me understand for the first time the emotional competency of emotional self-control, and it's something that I'm always working on within myself. One of the things that used to really annoy me about me was if I was under stress or pressure or there are a lot of things that were going on, I could get quite snappy with my team, and I'd look back at that and just really feel a lot of shame around that, because I don't want to be that person. I want to be approachable and kind and supportive, and yet there were points where I wasn't doing that, and that book for me helped me understand why it is that I might be reacting in that way, and what some of the things I could start doing would be. So around this idea of nurturing your chimp, and helping you understand, you know, why it's upset, why it's enabling these things to happen. Absolutely revolutionary for me, and it's something that my clients find really helpful as well. So I end up talking about it quite a lot with my clients. And then another one, which is a book that I don't really hear being talked about very much. It's Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee Adams. So you might know it. Amazing. And that book for me, when I was at Deloitte, we had access to a whole set of online books, and that one looked interesting. I happened to download it. I read just the introduction just before I was due to go into a coaching session with a woman who was about to go on maternity leave. I used the sort of technique that she talked about in that short introduction with her, and it was amazing. The conversation in this woman's whole outlook just shifted. I can tell you, I think I read that book within 2 days after that, because just that whole idea of the questions you're asking yourself really prime you for the way a situation is going to go. Phenomenal.
I really like that. It's got like a deeper psychological look than you first think, based on the commercial like title. It really got me thinking.
Mm.
I have a reflection on what you were saying, and I kind of like when you were describing helping, like walking people around their own house, and being able to like tidy up one room at a time, right? And being able to not being overwhelmed with, I got to clean the house before company comes over, right? But I'm going to help you with this room. All right. And then I'm going to help you with this room. So part of it is I heard like one room at a time, you can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd not thought about the kind of cleaning analogy. So that's really given me even something more to think about. I used to think about it sort of you get to roam around the house and there'll be things in different rooms that might help you. But this idea of how do you organize that space? Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Reminded me of like the getting unstuck, right? I think that's when someone describes like, hey, what is coaching? And we talk about getting unstuck. That was like the one thing that came to my mind. Like, how can I help you get unstuck? There's something that is blocking you from moving on. What is that? What is that conversation that will just help you move on, or just to be able to kind of put it in its place, or even just to kind of put it to the side and say, I think I've talked about it as much as I can right now, and I'm ready to move on. Now, just to make the parallel, the other thing I thought about with related to Think Like a Coach. So appreciate how you described your journey. I don't know with self-publishing whether many people would have that experience of working with a publisher and editor. So I find that to be fascinating in today's book market. But the other one is if I, as a supervisor, can help the people that work for me get unstuck, that to me seems like golden. And as a supervisor, I am like enabling or empowering, whatever the word you use, like conversations that really shift their perspective in a very simple way rather than, um, adding more to their burden or where they feel like, oh, it's just, I hate going and meeting my supervisor because I just feel like they just give me a ton more work, and I really don't want more work. Anyway, that was Jude. It's kind of hard to ignore your enthusiasm for coaching. So I would say that is a very inspirational quality. Thank you for bringing that.
I have a Matt. You made me think of another question, and it's back to like the part of where you were in your writings around a team coach, and like people have asked, like, all right, well, if you think the role of a manager is to be a team coach, what is that? How would you describe that? Like your role as managing a team is to do this.
I think managers have so many different hats. And one of the places I think organizations have made a mistake in the way that they're training their managers to have coaching skills is that they're using the same kind of coaching models and training, but vastly cut down than a professional coach would get. So, like for us, I did, I think 60 hours of training was my initial training before I even coached anybody that was outside of my training um, group. And so, there's a lot that goes into that. And then you take a manager and you say, well, look, we want you to coach your team because we know that when people are coached, engagement goes up, productivity goes up, satisfaction goes up, all these great things. But the way we're going to train you to do that is we're going to teach you the GROW model in half a day. And then we wonder why managers are not coaching and why they're sitting there going, but I haven't got enough time for this. I can't take, an hour times however many team members I have every week to have these kind of coaching sessions. And that's kind of what I was trying to address in the book, was saying, you don't have to be, just like you don't have to be a professional chef to cook a nutritious meal, you don't have to be a professional coach to be able to coach your team. You can be coach-like, which is about taking some of those skills and using them in just the flow of your normal everyday conversations. And I think where you've got people who are stepping up into that people manager role, especially for the first time, one of the things that is not being acknowledged is it's a bit of a career change. You're not just being that individual contributor anymore with all of that technical expertise. Often you still have to do that. And now you're also managing the people in your team, helping them with the technical task focused stuff, and then all the bits that nobody tells you about. Your team's demotivated, they're not performing well. I'm trying, you're supposed to be delegating things to your team. Like there's so much that's going on for managers. And as they move up throughout their career, then you become a manager of managers, and it's like, whoa, so that's a kind of whole other level. So what I would say around the role of a manager when it comes to coaching, it's about adding to your toolkit of the different ways that you are interacting with your team. And what I tend to find, and actually what people that I have been training with these techniques are finding, is that it feels a little bit like magic, because when you hold back your impulse to be super helpful and just solve every problem for your team, because that feels like a really amazing thing to do, right? But when you keep doing that, they keep coming back to you over and over and over. So, you're doing their work during the day and your work at night. But if you can adopt some of these coach-like techniques and style, then what you're doing is you're encouraging your team to do more of the thinking themselves. And that builds their confidence and it builds their feeling of self-worth. And it means that they don't have to keep coming back to you and checking in with you all the time, because now they're more confident in their own ability. So they can be going out and doing more of these things. There was a a woman on a workshop that I did last year, and I always do the workshops in two parts. So the first one is about learning the skills, and then the second one, 4 to 6 weeks later, is to come back. You've been out there using them in the real world. Let's see how it's going on, and also work on the challenges that you've been facing. And she said that the big thing for her was that her team had achieved more in that 6 week period between the two workshops than they had in the previous 3 months. And it was all just down to the fact that she kept reminding herself to stop and ask her team a few more questions before jumping in to fix the problems for them. And she's just like, they're doing things I didn't even think they could do. And it feels amazing because nobody's showing up to work going they want to be a bad manager, right? It's just that the situation has forced them into that. And every manager I meet, when you ask them about the legacy that they want to leave behind, the time and time again, the things that come up is they want to be that manager that their team member looks back and remembers fondly, the one that really helped them develop and challenged them to be their best, that, felt like they had that great supporter and that cheerleader. And I think having some of these coach-like skills enables you to be able to create that.
It's beautifully said.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, Jude, could you give us a little bit of insight or idea of, so we have some listeners that are new coaches or relatively new coaches, and they're wondering if they can make it. I think and full stop. What would you have wanted to hear 5 years ago as you were 1 year into your coach journey on your own?
I think the first one is somebody really should have sat me down and held me there and said, you have to have a niche. And you need to be really clear on what that niche is. It can evolve and change over time, but we know as coaches that we can coach everybody, but you can't sell to everybody because everybody doesn't exist, right? You've got to be clear about who that person is that you're selling to. And when you do that, as scary as it is, you're not cutting other people out. So I talk a lot about that I work with professional services firms because that's my background. I've just recently, the client I'm working with at the moment is a huge venue provider. So not in professional services at all, but that hasn't turned them off. I think actually they kind of just probably glossed over the professional services, but when they start reading what it is that I'm doing, because it's a lot more clear, they can look at it and go, oh yeah, that can work for us. I can see myself and see my people doing this. And that's something that I really wish someone had kind of, I think a few people had told me, and maybe I'd done a couple of workshops or something around it. But I'm in a business mentoring group at the moment, and that's really the foundational thing that they're showing us in that program. The other thing, and I know you had Jo Wright on recently. I've gotten to meet her a bit, and she's absolutely amazing. And somebody connected me with her because her book had been out just a little bit more than mine, and I was thinking about how to promote my book and get it out there. And I had a chat to her, and she said, "Look, you're doing all of the right things. The only difference between you and me is." You have 1,600 followers on LinkedIn. I think it's over 20,000 followers. And she's like, you've just got to max those connection requests every week. She said, it doesn't matter that it doesn't feel great. You're in business. And if you want to stay in business, then people need to know who you are. And actually I'd come across something early in my going freelance that it sort of had that suggestion of maxing these LinkedIn connection things, and it just felt icky and I couldn't do it. Now I'd go back to that self and say, you're doing it, just do it. Because it does make a difference that, I feel like I'm name dropping all over the place here, but I was on a webinar with Marshall Goldsmith, and someone asked him sort of that question of, how do you get out there and promote yourself as a coach? And he asked the person, do you believe what you're doing is worthwhile, that it's helpful to others? And they're like, yeah, of course. And then he was like, well, then you just have to get over yourself, because if you don't tell people what you're doing, and tell them how it can help them, they can't buy it.
Yeah.
And I was kind of shocked because that was the last thing I would have thought to have heard out of his mouth. But I keep that with me now all the time. I just have to get over myself. I really think these ideas and the model that I've come up with work, and I think they can really help managers, and they aren't going to know unless I shout about it.
Jude, what? Okay, so someone is going, okay, how do I get a hold of Jude? How would you want people to get it? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
So LinkedIn, I think, is probably the best because you can interact with me there. You can see some of the stuff that I'm doing. If you want to find out maybe more about me and about the programs that I offer, then thinkwithjude.com. The website is a really great place to go. You can read some of the blogs and things that I do. And I've also got a piece on there where I talk about my model from the book, The Coaching Two-Step. And there's even a demonstration so you can see it in action and get a feel for it.
Very cool. Dave, what do you think?
This has been a fabulous conversation, Jude. It makes me think so much, and actually, I'm left with how we help people get over themselves is a big part of coaching, and it's that voice that people need to find in themselves. Is we create so many barriers ourselves to that. So thank you for sharing that. I want to end it with a shout out to our sponsor. Are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed? Charactermatics Coaching Consulting provides leadership coaching and consulting to empower you to overcome obstacles and reach your full potential. Visit charactermatics.com to learn more about their transformative coaching and how to get connected to Matt for your organization. Thank you again, Jude. I really appreciate getting to know you and learning more about your secret sauce of coaching.
Amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've had so much fun.
So there is also information in the show notes that you can find Jude's website. You can find her book on Amazon or any other place that you get your books, and find her on LinkedIn. Well worth when you see her post on whatever she's working on. It is always informative, and she does interact. So if you respond with a comment, she will comment back. So know that you'll get the chance to interact directly with her. Thanks again, Jude, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.